Well, good morning. Welcome to Debbie's Back Porch. So glad to have you with us. You know, I'm diabetic. I eat diabetic foods. I keep carbs low, but sometimes you just crave something sweet. So I made some elegant little cheesecakes. Cheesecakes are easy to convert to something low carb, no sugar, without compromising the flavor, and I'm going to show you how to do that. In the meantime, if you'd give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel, click the little bell icon in the top right, you'll get a notice when I post new videos. Now let's make something scrumptious. You know, cheesecake is not a cake, it's a custard. And the crust is where most of the carbs lie anyway. So we're going to make a crust out of almond flour. And to sweeten it, I'm going to use Sukrin Gold. You can use any kind of artificial sweetener or sugar if you like. I'm also melting a half stick of butter. Now for the cheesecake itself, I use sucralose. A lot of folks don't use sucralose. You can use Truvia or stevia if you like it. You could use the Sukrin Gold, but it brings color. This is 1 pound of cream cheese. I'm going to use a half cup of sour cream. You can use heavy whipping cream if you prefer, but I like sour cream. Then I have 2 eggs. These are large eggs. I'm going to break them one at a time when I get ready to use them. Then I'm going to use 1 teaspoon of vanilla, and in this case I'm using vanilla bean paste. It leaves little tiny spots of the vanilla in it, and I like the way it looks and the way it tastes. 1/8 teaspoon salt, 1/4 teaspoon nutmeg, and I'll show you the strawberry sauce later. Now these are the cupcake molds that you use to make those big muffins. They're about 3 inches across. You can make regular cupcake size. I'll tell you the difference in time later. I fit these down into the little ramekins I use to make creme brulee. These are 6-ounce ramekins. Now you don't have to do all this. You can just cook these in a ramekin and eat them right out of it and not turn them out. But we're going to turn these out, so I'm using the little molds. So we'll start with the crust. I'm going to use almond flour. I'm going to use 3/4 cup almond flour. This is never going to get as crispy as if you used graham crackers, and you can make your regular graham cracker crust if you like, if you're not watching carbs. And I can sometimes find sugar-free graham crackers or vanilla wafers, but you know, they still have flour in them. So we're going with the almond flour. Then I'm going to add the Sukrin Gold. If you've not tried this, and if you eat artificial sweeteners, you may want to try it. This is 2 tablespoons full of the Sukrin Gold, and you know, it really does taste like brown sugar. An alternative would also be monk fruit. That's good stuff. Then I'm going to add a half stick of butter that I melted in the microwave, and we're just going to mix that up thoroughly. It doesn't mix as easily, by the way, as the graham cracker, so make sure that you stir it well. It'll lump in there and it'll get stuck. I use almond flour fairly often. It brings a really great nutty flavor. And it's basically just blanched, ground up almonds. So when we mix this together, I'm going to set it to the side in the bowl while I mix up the cheesecake. And I'll be right back. This is my 1 pound of cream cheese, and I've let it come to room temperature so that it would be soft. And I'm going to break it up a little bit to start with, because you want to minimize your beating when you're making a cheesecake. That's a half cup of Splenda. And if you don't use it, you can use sugar. This recipe is just the same. So why do we want to minimize the beating? Well, when you beat cream cheese, eggs, sour cream, you introduce air into the mix. They get fluffy. You're beating air into the mixture. Then when you bake it, that air escapes and your cheesecake collapses and cracks. And we don't want cracks, so we're not going to beat it a lot. That's 1 teaspoonful of vanilla, either kind, regular vanilla extract or the vanilla bean paste. And I'm using a hand mixer here, and I'll mix it on medium speed. Low to medium. You want to mix it together without beating in too much air. If you're using your KitchenAid, use the paddle attachment for the same reason, to minimize the air you introduce into the mixture. Now I'm going to pretty much do this in real time. And at this point you want to beat it fairly well because you want to break up all of the cream cheese that's still kind of solid in there. So nothing in here yet except the sugar and the vanilla, or the sweetener in the vanilla. And we want to get it all creamed in very well. And on the matter of how much you mix it, when you really want to be careful is after you add the eggs. Because once you introduce eggs into that, as I say, it's going to get fluffy. And it'll swell up and hold on to that air. Now, I am adding salt. And not everybody adds salt to a cheesecake. But you really want to add just a touch. So that's about 1/8 of a teaspoonful. A pinch, really. And then I'm going to add some nutmeg. And right now I have ground nutmeg. A little fresh is better, but I'm embarrassed to tell you, I can't seem to find mine. So I'm going to put in 1/4 teaspoon of ground nutmeg. And if you have fresh, just a good healthy grate of fresh nutmeg. So we're going to blend all of that in. You know, nutmeg to dairy products is just lovely. And I'm going to have to search. I think I actually put mine in the top of the cabinet because I don't use it all that often. Next, I'm going to add 1/2 cup of sour cream. And it's going to start getting a lot softer now. This recipe is the creamiest cheesecake I think I've ever made. And we're going to watch very carefully not to overcook this. You know, I find that folks who worry about their cheesecake cracking, besides introducing too much air, have often overcooked. A cheesecake is not a cake, I'll say again. It's a custard. And you want to cook it low and slow. And I cook mine in a water bath. And that sort of helps eliminate the drying out that can cause the cracking. So let me just scrape this down a bit. I want to make sure I get all the flavors blended in and the sour cream blended in. And because once we add the eggs, we really don't want to mix it much. So this is all mixed together. It's smooth. It's time for the eggs. Now I add the eggs one at a time. I don't beat them first. I don't want to introduce extra air. And when you add the eggs, you only want to beat the mixture until the yellow is gone. When you don't see any streaks of yellow, it's mixed enough. And then we'll add the second egg. By the way, you probably know this, but always break your egg into a bowl or some kind of a container before you add it to your mixture. Because on the off chance you found a bad egg, which is not common but happens, you've ruined your whole cheesecake. So, just going to mix this enough to make sure that all the egg is broken up and mixed in. And that looks like about enough. I'm going to scrape down the sides and finish mixing it in by hand. Just mix down what I've scraped. And then we're going to start putting it together. So here is my almond flour crust. And I have 4 cups. This makes 4 6-ounce cups. And it would make more muffins. I'm not quite sure how many of the little regular size, cupcake size it would make. But I split this up into even amounts. And you want to have it not too thick, but enough. Get a little thickness on it at the bottom. And just a word here, if you're buying the muffin cups, if you can get the aluminum foil ones, that's better. These get kind of soggy and difficult to peel off because they're pretty thin paper, but they're what I've got, and so I'm going to make do. But a thicker, sturdier one would be better, because this is a lot of moisture to add to this little paper cup. So now I'm just going to press this down, press all the air out of it, kind of smooth it off. And then I'll show you what we've got here. There you go. I'll do the rest of these, and then I'll be right back. I have my oven preheated to 300 degrees, and I'm going to add these in. Cheesecakes really need to cook at a low temperature, and cook them in a water bath if you can. It's kind of hard to do that with a muffin tin, but you might be able to. Now, I've made this recipe before, so I know that about how much to fill them up. If this is your first time and you're not sure, fill each one halfway and then just add a little bit to each one until all your batter's gone, and that way you get an even amount. Now, when you're filling these, remember they're not really going to rise. So you can fill them all the way to the top. And when you get them full, we want to bump the air out. So I take each one and gently bump it on the counter. And this is just to work any excess air out and to get them to settle and not have any bubbles underneath. Then I'll add some hot water, and I'll put these in the middle of a preheated oven at 300 degrees for 30 to 35 minutes. If you're using regular size muffin tins, for 18 to 20 minutes. And after 30 minutes, I turn the oven off, and you want them to be a little jiggly. Excuse my wild and crazy hair. Let them cool with the oven door open about 30 minutes. So that's what I mean by jiggly. They're not liquid, but they're jiggly. And that's not a crack, by the way. I know it may look like a crack to you on the camera, but it's not. It's just where the batter was kind of folded over. It doesn't go down in. And we want to let these cool on a rack for about an hour before we chill them in the fridge, because otherwise we'll get condensation on top. And I want to let you look at these. As you can see, that's where the batter, I probably should have made it smoother on the top, but that's just right across the surface. So an hour later, and we're going to cover these with plastic wrap to keep them from absorbing any other odors. I don't want these to taste like, broccoli or asparagus. And chill them for at least 3 hours. If you want to turn them out. If you don't want to turn them out, you can eat them now. But they'll be really soft. So I'm going to serve these tomorrow. I'll come back and show you how I top them. So you're going to add the topping right before serving, and this is optional. I have here, it's about 3 or 4 tablespoons full of Pollaner all fruit. And this is enough to top 2 of the little cheesecakes. And all I'm going to do is heat it up until it gets kind of melty, which breaks down the pectin so that you have a sauce instead of a jam. Now this has no sugar added. It's about 1 net gram of carbs per tablespoonful. So we're going to put about 2 tablespoons full on each one. And if you prefer, you could just use a few fresh strawberries and not fool this at all, but this is so good. And it doesn't cost a lot of carbs. That's it. I did it on low heat. I'm going to turn it off. And then I'm going to plate the whole beautiful dessert up. And I'll be right back. So I have turned this out of the ramekin. And I'm going to peel the paper off. And I warned you, these little paper cups get very moist, so they come all apart. And you want to make sure you get it off the bottom well. Now they've firmed up quite a bit, but they're still very soft and creamy. So we're going to dress this up a little bit. And yeah, I'm sorry. Got a shot of my dirty dishes in the sink because, you know, I'm a messy cook. So we want to take a knife. I just dipped it in a little warm water and dried it off. Just wanted to heat it up just a little. And I'm going to smooth out the sides. And as I'm doing this, you will get an idea of how very soft and creamy this has stayed. I really like creamy cheesecake. And I know sometimes when you get cheesecake, the texture is more cake-like. But to me, as I've said before, it's a custard. And you want that custard texture. So here is our strawberry sauce. And I just sort of spread that out. See how pretty that is? And if you're going to make a fancy dessert, you might as well go whole hog and make it really fancy. That was the easiest sauce ever made. Then I've sliced up a couple of strawberries here. Just going to arrange them around the bottom. I couldn't get any really huge strawberries. I like really huge strawberries for this. And I've got one, I've just topped it. I'm going to put this right on top. And add just a tiny bit more of the sauce over that. Okay, you could serve this in any restaurant. But you can eat it because it's low carb. And that's what I'm going to do. I want you to pay particular attention to the texture, the custardy texture of that soft and creamy cheesecake. And the strawberries just add a little touch. This is easier than most cheesecake. It's easier to make these little individual ones than it is to make the big one. It's easier to get through it without cracks, and it's easier to keep it soft and moist and custardy. And the fact that you can make it ahead is a plus when you're having friends over for dinner. I hope you try this recipe. I hope you love it. And I hope you join us again tomorrow on Debbie's Back Porch.